I've read a lot of stories on this channel. Stalkers, home invasions, things in the woods that shouldn't exist. But every once in a while, one lands in my inbox that I read once, sit back in my chair, and just stare at the wall for a minute. This is one of those. It was sent in by a viewer who asked to stay anonymous, so I'll just call her Danielle. This happened when she was 20 years old, working her first real job at a corporate office building in the Midwest. Here's her story, in her own words. I was a sophomore in college, and I picked up a part-time job at the front desk of an office building downtown. Nothing exciting, just checking people in, handing out visitor badges, answering the phone. The building had 4 floors, mostly law firms and an insurance company, and it emptied out completely by 6 p.m. I worked the closing shift a few nights a week, which meant I was usually alone in that lobby from 6 to 9. The building had one security guard on rotation for the overnight hours. I'd never actually met him before my second week. My manager just said, "Marcus does the night shift, he'll lock up after you leave, don't worry about it." I didn't think anything of it. The first time I saw him, it was maybe 8:45 on a Tuesday. I was gathering my stuff to leave when the elevator doors opened, and out walked a heavy-set man in a gray security uniform, maybe mid-40s, with this real slow, deliberate way of moving. He didn't say hi. He just looked at me, not a glance, a look like he was cataloging something, and walked past the desk toward the stairwell. I said, "You must be Marcus." And he stopped. Didn't turn around all the way, just kind of angled his head over his shoulder and said, "That's right," then kept walking. I remember thinking, okay, that was weird, but whatever. Some people just aren't chatty. I grabbed my bag and left. The next few weeks I'd catch him here and there. He was never rude exactly. He just had this presence that made the hair on my arm stand up every single time. He'd show up out of nowhere. I'd be sitting at the desk with my headphones in, look up, and he'd just be standing at the end of the hallway watching me. Not walking toward me, not walking away, just standing there. One night I asked him straight up, "How long have you worked here?" And he said, "Long enough to know who comes and goes," which, what does that even mean? I laughed it off like it was a joke. He didn't laugh. Here's where it started actually scaring me. I started noticing that no matter what time I left, 7, 8, 9, sometimes I'd stay late finishing homework at the desk, Marcus would appear in the lobby within a few minutes of me packing up. Every single time. Like he knew. I told myself the building probably had cameras and he just watched a monitor somewhere. Which, fine, that's his job. But it started feeling less like security, and more like he was waiting. One night in October I stayed until almost 9:30, later than usual because I had a paper due. The lobby lights on a timer had already switched to the dimmer overnight setting, so it was pretty dark except for my desk lamp. I heard the stairwell door open. Not the elevator, the stairwell, which nobody used, and Marcus walked out. He crossed the entire lobby, walked right up to the desk and just stood there. Closer than a coworker stands. He said, "You're here late." I said, "Yeah, just finishing something up." He said, "I like when you're here late," and smiled. I felt my stomach drop straight through the floor. I grabbed my bag, said I was actually all done, and practically power walked to my car. I remember sitting in the driver's seat with the doors locked, hands shaking before I even put the key in the ignition. I told my roommate what happened and she said the obvious thing, report him. So the next day I called my manager and explained it. She sounded uncomfortable but said she'd look into it. 2 days later she told me Marcus had worked there for 6 years with 0 complaints and that maybe I misread the situation. I remember feeling so small hearing that, like I'd made it up. So I started timing my shifts to leave the second the clock hit closing. Badge already in hand. Keys already in my fist like a weapon the way they teach you in those self-defense videos. For about 2 weeks, nothing happened. I actually started to relax a little. Then one night I left at exactly 6:01. I was maybe 30 feet from my car in the parking garage when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate, that same walk. I turned around and the garage was empty. Completely empty. No Marcus. No anyone. I chalked it up to nerves and got in my car. I checked my rearview mirror pulling out of the garage and saw him, standing at the pedestrian exit, just watching my car leave. He had no reason to be down there. His post was the front desk and the floors, not the parking structure. That was the night I quit texting my manager and started documenting everything. Dates, times, exactly what he said, screenshotting the shift schedule so I could prove he showed up on nights he wasn't even supposed to be working. because that's the part that really got under my skin. I pulled up the security company's public shift roster that was taped to the break room wall, out of paranoia more than anything, and cross-referenced it with my own closing nights. Marcus was scheduled for exactly 0 of the nights I stayed late. He wasn't on the clock. He was choosing to be there. Specifically on the nights I was there. I quit that Friday. Didn't give 2 weeks, didn't explain much, just told my manager I found a job closer to campus. She didn't push back, which honestly made me even more suspicious that maybe she already knew something was off and just didn't want to deal with it. About 2 months later, a friend who still worked in that building told me Marcus had been let go. Not because of me, because another woman who worked nights on a different floor had filed a police report after finding out he'd been let into the building using her fob's records to track exactly when she came and went, and that he'd shown up at a bar she frequented twice, on nights she hadn't posted anywhere that she'd be there. I don't know everything that happened after that. I know he doesn't work security in that city anymore. At least not under a company I could find. And I know that for about a year afterward, I couldn't sit in an empty room with my back to a door without my whole body going cold. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't a monster in the woods. It's a guy in a uniform with a badge and a key to every door in the building, deciding you're the one he wants to watch.